Everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about performance practice for pianists and likely other musicians as well, and why it makes a big difference in your piano progress and likely your whole enjoyment of the piano and your playing as well. So I think that a lot of people are maybe not skeptical, but they're not sure as to how exactly performance practice will help them if they're not already inherently interested in it. So there are people that are neutral, that are positive, enthusiastic about performing for others. Then there's those that are neutral or leaning towards negative. Maybe they had negative experiences as a child. Maybe they're very private. Maybe they feel they're doing it just for themselves. They don't feel any particular need or enthusiasm for performance. So the first thing I'll say here is that while a lot of my other videos so far have talked about like the nitty-gritty granular detail of super specific practice from this spot to this spot and all of the intricate strategy that's involved, this is kind of the opposite. I mean, this is the 30,000 foot view, the global view of your piece, and it really lets you prioritize the things that are most important in keeping the big picture clear. So I think I would say that first. It really helps to, after you do all of the really detailed practice, what is the current result, so to speak, of all of your practice? It's not the only measure. I mean, you can make recordings of yourself and you can argue that that's very different from live performance. Performance for others is also different from performance just all on your own. But, in general, it is a much better picture into your overall trajectory, I would say. And secondly, I would say most people, they want to perform for somebody at some point, even if it's just their immediate family, their mom, dad, brother, cousin, whatever it may be. I guess cousin is immediate family. But yeah, any kind of family member, their best friend, maybe they have one musician friend or whoever it may be. But they're taking lessons, whether they're casual or serious lessons, and then occasionally somebody may ask oh, you're taking lessons, could you play us something? Or if it's, maybe that's too much pressure. Maybe the person's parents are curious to hear what it's like since, they took lessons as a child. Now they've restarted. They want to hear, what it is that they're working on, or they just feel like sharing with a very close friend. So if that applies to you or to, whoever may be watching this video, that's definitely very relevant, because even though it's just these one or two very close people, you still want to be able to share with them as best you can. And then there's those that perhaps even this situation, they're reluctant to share. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with learning the instrument purely for yourself. But what I find is that for those that, we start going through some, and this isn't even very, very hardcore performance training of a boot camp or anything like that. We will go through kind of more specific training, leading up to recitals and so on. But even when they're just playing for me, and because that's the way that a lot of serious lessons will start off also. So let's just start with performing the piece, or maybe we have the performance of the piece some point in the middle of the session. A lot of the time, the most basic things about the performance are not even musically oriented. It's not, the main problem is not that they're not playing musically enough. It's not that they have some kind of technical issue, although those things could be true as well. But it's more that they start and then maybe they mess up and immediately they start apologizing, or they might nervously laugh, or they might swear, or they ask me if I can start over, or if they can start over. And I'm like, yeah, that's okay, but then after we've done that, maybe once or twice, I give them some basic advice. eventually, I mean, the purpose is to treat themselves as if they were on stage or as if they were playing for a loved one. Like, what would be the best from the point of view of the audience that's receiving the music, or from the point of view of assessing like the performance as objectively as is possible, right? There's a certain limit. Obviously, we still have our own subjective opinions. And a huge part of that is continuity, in terms of if there's some kind of little error, we just fake through it and just, we just pretend everything's fine. We pretend that it did go correctly. And yeah, so those are some of the things that come up almost immediately. It kind of manifests in different ways in terms of if the student is not very good at faking through a given area. And some of them don't understand at first of all, like how much it takes away from the performance or from the music as a whole when they actually like speak out loud, when they have reactions. They don't really understand like performance mode, like truly pretending that you're in a, real performance. And that thought experiment, the imagining that you're in the formal performance, that's what allows us to keep sight of the whole. Because, if someone's singing the Star Spangled Banner and they forget like the second line and then they speak out loud and they're like, hey audience, can I start this whole thing over again? Everyone will be like, I hope this person's fine. Like, I hope they can pull it together and just start again. Just keep going. Right. So then the audience will feel a mixture of pity and sympathy, and they won't be able to enjoy the performance either, because they're worried about the performer. Or I guess if they're sadistic, they're laughing at the performer. But for the most part, normal people, they're feeling for you. They really want you to pull through. And so, instead of starting the whole thing over, if you can do it, even if you have to like skip ahead or go back a section, try to do that. Obviously, try not to say anything. Try not to have any kind of, facial bodily reaction, anything to indicate that you've noticed that there's a mistake. If you can manage even above that, maybe you have some kind of like little hiccup in the performance, but you just keep on going. Don't acknowledge it. Don't make a big deal of it. Don't call attention. If you react, you're basically pointing to the mistake and saying like, look at me messing up now. So, and then better than that would be if you made some kind of error and you just continued in real time without missing a beat, right? Like literally you're playing and then you hit like wrong notes and it doesn't affect your timing at all. So yeah, so there's many different ways to go about faking, to go about recovering. I'm sure I'll go more into that in future videos. But that's the general gist of it. Keeping that continuity, keeping that bigger vision in mind of just presenting the piece as a whole. And the funny thing is, even if you're a hermit and you think, I'm never going to perform for anybody except for myself, I'm not just trying to either coax or force them into eventually performing for others, although that's possible. You genuinely will enjoy performing the music for yourself first, because this hypothetical hermit, if this student on their own, let's say that that they're apologizing to me, or that they're like starting over, or getting all sheepish in front of me. First of all, they might be doing that at home as well. Like they may be messing up and then having very big reactions and, making a big deal out of it. Secondly, if they mess up in front of me, they curse or swear or whatever it is, let's say they're of the personality that at home they mess up and they don't swear. Maybe they don't make as big a deal out of it. But from experience, through all my years of teaching, I would say that on some level, they are still judging themselves, even if it's not quite as overt as that. So it's, it's basically a practice of not being affected by any kind of external situation, whether it be others watching, other distractions, whatever it may be, whatever conditions you're in, you're still able to keep yourself in the music, keep the music going, and and I think enjoy it as much as possible as a result. So, yeah, so even in that hermit situation, usually, almost always what happens as we continue the practice of performance is that people become better at faking, they become better at just going through the mistakes, not only for others, but even for themselves. They practice this mindset, and they think to themselves, it's not a big deal if there's little mistakes. I'm still going to keep the music going. I'm still going to keep the big goal in mind, and as a result, enjoy the performance more. They'll stop apologizing to themselves. They'll stop getting as upset and as frustrated. They won't have to get all embarrassed, and right, depending on personality, these are all the different tendencies that can come up. So instead, even when they're performing for themselves, they'll be able to keep going in just about any situation, and then feel good that they could just sit down in any kind of condition, and I'll talk about this more in the future, and then just play for themselves this beautiful piece of music, and little mistakes don't get in the way of that enjoyment. And then, of course, if they perform for others, I mean, the benefits are, kind of even more in your face obvious. So, because obviously they can play for others, and, the audience won't notice if they messed up, or they'll be able to enjoy much more because the person isn't calling attention to themselves. I used to think it wasn't about ego. I thought ego was like, oh, look how good I am. Like, I'm so good at the piano, which was, that was never really my problem. It was always more, self-esteem related, like, is my playing good enough? But it is very much about ego, because it's very much about worrying about what others are thinking of me. If I'm messing up, the performance anxiety that comes up, which is something that nearly everybody deals with. So, yeah, once we can keep the focus away from ourselves and instead on the music, on delivering to the audience, that mindset combined with practical performance practice usually makes sharing music with others and with ourselves much more enjoyable. So, yeah, I originally thought maybe I would talk about the actual performance practice itself in terms of, what it is that you can do to practice performance. This time I kind of ended up talking about all the benefits and so on, and, the general mindset behind it. I think what I'll say is, like, definitely cold performance is very useful, and this is definitely going to be a future video along with other ideas. I mean, you can stretch and everything like you would before any other physical activity, but first thing when you sit down at the piano, other than, again, the stretching or warming up, if you want to just limber up, same as before anything else, just perform your piece. Don't warm up with scales. Don't warm up with other things first. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people that disagree, but just perform the piece of music that you're currently working on or that you're going to perform soon, because that's what it would be like in a formal situation. You take your bow, sit down, and perform, and it will go way better when you want to perform for somebody else. You don't have to make excuses. You can just literally sit down and just play. So, yeah, so I'll leave you with that thought. I'm going to say it again, I'm sure, in that future video. If you found this useful, interesting, helpful, please like and subscribe, perhaps leave a comment. And yeah, looking forward to next week as always.